Look at this. Thousands of acres. Wheat. Quiet. Peaceful. No soldiers, no burning villages, no armed escorts protecting the farmland. Just soil, rain, machinery, and the farmer who knows the harvest will still belong to him when the season ends. This field is somewhere on the outskirts of Poland, and most people driving past it will never think about it again. They will see food, bread, flour, stability. But somewhere else, thousands of kilometers from here, in the middle belt of Nigeria, a farmer wakes up not knowing if he will still own his land by the next planting season, not knowing if the road to the market will still exist, not knowing if imported grain will destroy his price before harvest even begins. One field is protected, the other is being emptied. One farmer plants for himself, the other plants inside a system he does not control. And the question is not weather. The question is not population. The question is not even corruption. The real question is, who profits when African agriculture collapses? Because hunger has a signature. I am a forensic investigator. This is the dossier on the agricultural cartel. You are watching Historic Capital. Alright, let's get back in the car. Let's drive back into Warsaw. Because the deeper I started looking into this story, the less it started feeling like agriculture, and the more it started feeling like infrastructure control. Most people think hunger begins on the farm. It doesn't. Hunger begins on paper, contracts, import licenses, seed patents, foreign exchange approvals, shipping routes. That's where food prices are really decided. And once you understand that, you stop looking at bread as food, and you start looking at it as a financial instrument. Now stay with me, because to understand why Nigerian farmers keep losing, we need to start with 4 companies. It's a Tuesday morning. A cargo ship docks at Apapa port, Lagos. 50,000 metric tons of wheat from Russia. Before the cranes lift a single sack, the money has already moved. A wire transfer leaves the Central Bank of Nigeria, millions of US dollars. The account it lands in is in Geneva, Switzerland. The transfer is approved, signed, quiet. Now, stay with me. A few hundred miles north, in the open fields of Kano and Jigawa, Nigerian farmers are watching their own wheat, sitting in the sun, rotting. No buyer, no silo, no road to the market. So let me ask you something simple. A country with 70 million hectares of fertile land spends over $2 billion every year importing grain. You were told the farmers are lazy. You were told the rain failed. You were told the supply chain is broken. But hunger is never a story about weather. Hunger has a signature, and the signature is on a piece of paper. Today, we read the paper. Look at this carefully. You don't need an army to control a population. You only need to control the seed, the wheat, the maize, the rice. Back home we say, he who controls the granary controls the village. This is not a village. This is a continent. 4 companies, 4 names. Memorize them. Archer Daniels Midland, Chicago, Bungie, St. Louis, and now Geneva, Cargill, Minneapolis. Privately held, the largest private corporation in America. Louis Dreyfus, Rotterdam, Paris, Geneva. In the financial world, they call them the ABCD companies. Together, they control somewhere between 70 and 90% of the world's grain trade. They are not farmers. They do not plant. They do not harvest. They do not get their hands dirty. They are hedge funds with ships. They buy subsidized grain from the United States, from Russia, from Brazil. They load it onto vessels they own, and they look for a market to flood. Nigeria is the market. But to dump grain into Nigeria, they need a partner on the ground, someone with a milling factory, someone with the licenses, someone who knows the right people. The Lagos miller signs the contract. Flour Mills of Nigeria, founded 1960. Olam, headquartered in Singapore. The ship leaves Geneva. The wheat lands in Apapa. The flour leaves the mill. The bakery prices it. You pay for it. A closed loop, clean, locked. But to make the loop work, they had a problem. They had to make sure that the Nigerian farmer never planted a single seed that could compete. So how do you kill a farm without touching it? You go upstream. You go to the seed. In 2006, two foundations sat in a room in New York. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. They founded a project called AGRA, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. The story they told was beautiful. Modernize African agriculture, lift the smallholder farmer, feed a continent. Read the year again, 2006. Now look at what AGRA actually delivered. The seed your grandmother planted, open-pollinated, free, saved from last year's harvest, was quietly pushed out of the system. The new seed was different, patented, hybrid, locked. A seed you cannot save. A seed that loses its strength in the second generation. A seed that must be bought every year from the same supplier. And the seed only grows properly with the right chemical companion. Fertilizer, herbicide, glyphosate, Bayer, Syngenta, Corteva. The same companies that sold the seed sold the spray. Then came the next phase. January 2019, Abuja. The National Biosafety Management Agency approved genetically modified cowpea for commercial release in Nigeria. Cowpea, the bean in every Nigerian kitchen, akara, moi moi, beans and rice on a Sunday afternoon, a staple that fed this country for 1,000 years, now patented. Read the year, 2019. Read the venue, Abuja. The bean in your wife's pot of moi moi tonight was developed in a laboratory, owned by a multinational, licensed to a foundation, imported into your kitchen. The thing your grandmother gave you for free is now intellectual property. You can't save the seed, by design. This is the upstream weapon. Before the harvest, before the silo, before the market, they went to the seed, and the seed is in your stomach right now. Now bring it back to the men in Abuja. For years, the government held press conferences. They said they were banning food imports, closing the borders, protecting the farmer. People believed them. But the borders were only closed to the poor. Behind closed doors, quietly, without any press release, the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank were signing a very different piece of paper. The import waiver, a small document worth billions. These waivers were handed to the same Lagos millers, the same monopolies importing the same foreign grain. Then came the second gift. The central bank did not just give them the license to import, they gave them the dollars to use it. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria between June 2014 and June 2023 was Godwin Emefiele. Under his authority, the official forex window opened. The local oligarchs walked in. They bought hundreds of millions of US dollars, at 400 naira to $1. The country was buying that same dollar on the street, at 800, at 1,000, but the cartel had the official rate. They wired the cheap dollars to Cargill, to Louis Dreyfus, to Geneva. They bought the wheat at a discount no Nigerian farmer could match. Now picture a farmer in Benue. He buys his fertilizer at the street rate. He buys diesel at the street rate. He fixes the broken road himself just to get his produce to town. When he brings his maize to the market, his price is mathematically higher than the imported grain. He cannot win, not because he is a bad farmer, because the math was rigged before he planted. He goes bankrupt, he abandons the land, and the cartel buys the land for nothing. Nigeria owned the soil, but not the food. By 2015, the anger on the street was getting loud. The government needed a win it could put on television. So on the 17th of November 2015, in Birnin Kebbi, Kebbi State, President Muhammadu Buhari stood at a podium, and he launched the Anchor Borrowers Program. Read the date, the 17th of November, 2015. The story they told was beautiful. The money would bypass the corrupt banks. It would go directly to the smallholder farmer. Seeds, fertilizer, cash. Nigeria would grow its own rice. The imports would end. Over 1 trillion naira was committed to the program. 1 trillion naira. Now, read the structure of the contract. The money did not go to the farmer. It went to an anchor, a large private corporation, a milling company, one of the same monopolies we have already named. Then the contract was handed to the farmer. The farmer received seeds and fertilizer, on credit, not as a gift, on credit. When the harvest came, the farmer was legally obligated to sell his entire crop to the anchor company, at a price the anchor had already decided in advance. The anchor supplied the inputs at inflated rates, their prices, their margin. The anchor bought the rice at below market value, their terms, their margin again. If the harvest failed, flooding, drought, an attack on the field, the farmer's debt was not forgiven. His bank account was frozen. His BVN was flagged. He was locked out of the financial system. Back home we say, the borrower is slave to the lender. The program proved it. The smallholder carried the weather risk, the security risk, the crop failure risk. The anchor took the guaranteed grain, processed it, sold it, walked away. 1 trillion naira of public money, used to convert independent Nigerian farmers into sharecroppers for the elite. Hunger has a signature, and the signature was on the table that day, in Birnin Kebbi. Now look at the map of the Middle Belt: Plateau, Benue, Kaduna, Taraba, Nasarawa. Some of the most agriculturally viable soil on the African continent. Between 2014 and 2023, that stretch of country became one of the most violent regions on Earth. Villages burned, crops abandoned, entire communities displaced, thousands killed. The estimates change depending on who is counting. Pick the lowest number, it is still enormous. The press called it a herder-farmer clash. That phrase was cleaner than what was happening. Now look at the timeline. The federal government, under President Muhammadu Buhari, proposed 2 things during the same window. First, the cattle colony policy, announced 2018. Then, the Ruga settlements, announced 2019. Both proposed to allocate large pieces of land in the Middle Belt for pastoralist settlements. Both were withdrawn after public protest. But look at what continued anyway. The violence did not stop in 2019. It accelerated. Land was emptied. Owners fled. Documents were lost. And here is what you have to understand about an emptied field. It is cheap. A field with a body in it is not a field anyone wants to plant. A field with a body in it, 6 months later, is a field that sells for almost nothing. To corporate buyers, to political allies, to agricultural conglomerates registered in Lagos and Abuja. Read the registry. Read the dates. The same years the violence peaked, the same years large-scale agricultural acquisitions were filed. The herder did not invent this. The farmer did not invent this. Both of them are the harvest. Someone upstream is doing the planting. And here is what happens next. An emptied field grows nothing. A country whose middle belt grows nothing must import. And every import lands on your dinner table. Look at the price of bread. A standard loaf in Lagos cost around 300 naira a few years ago. Today, over 1,500. The bakery owner tells you it is the cost of flour. Flour mills raise the price. Why? Because they buy their wheat in US dollars from the ABCD traders. And when the central bank devalued the naira, the cost of that wheat tripled overnight. The miller does not absorb the loss. He passes it to the bakery. The bakery passes it to you. A mother in Enugu skips a meal so her children can eat. A factory worker in Ibadan is spending 70% of his monthly salary on carbohydrates. Bread, rice, pasta. That is the invoice. That is what the waiver pipeline actually costs at the street level. The bean in the moi moi, the rice in the pot, the bread on the counter, was decided in a contract you have never read, signed by men you have never met, in a building you have never entered, in a year you have already lived through. We say in Africa, the frog does not run in the daytime for nothing. Something is chasing it. Something was always chasing this. The starvation is not an accident. It is the business model. The receipt is in your kitchen. Open the file. One more time. The 4 traders in Chicago, in Minneapolis, in Geneva, the 2 foundations in New York that quietly replaced the seed, the agency in Abuja that approved the patented cowpea in 2019, the governor of the central bank who held that chair from 2014 to 2023, the president who stood in Birnin Kebi on the 17th of November 2015, the emptied fields of the Middle Belt that nobody wants to talk about, and the bread on your kitchen counter tonight. These are not separate stories, they are the same piece of paper signed by different hands. When a politician cuts a ribbon at a gleaming new food factory, do not applaud. Ask who holds the import waiver. Ask where the seed came from. Ask whose name is on the registry of the new commercial farm. Ask why the field next to it is empty. They did not build a factory to feed a nation. They built a toll gate on the human stomach. If this file changed how you see the price of food, share it right now. Send it to the brother who still thinks the farmers are lazy, to the cousin who thinks the rain failed, to the friend who thinks the road is broken. The road is broken by design. The next file is already open. There is one more asset they want from you, the asset you physically live in. 4 walls that drain your salary every month. If you want us to open the real estate cartel, how politicians launder billions through Echo Atlantic and Banana Island, subscribe right now. And leave one comment below. How much does a loaf of bread cost in your city today? Tell us. Let's read the receipts together. You are watching Historic Capital. The truth is in the transactions. Follow the money.